In episode 1, we explored what the term project finance actually means, and we looked at the type of corporate structure which tends to be seen in limited recourse financing using a simple boxes and arrows diagram. We learned that project finance tends to be relatively expensive, time-consuming, and complex. So, why would a project owner consider using this type of financing? Well, without claiming that this is necessarily a complete list, in this episode I'm going to suggest 5 reasons why sponsors might decide to use project financing. They are no choice, ring fencing, joint ventures, transfer of risk, and maximising the debt element of the financing package. Let's look at these one by one. First of all, no choice. Some sponsors just do not have the corporate substance to borrow the financing for a project against their balance sheet. This often happens, for example, with new entrants into the renewable energy area. 3 guys in a garage who want to build a wind farm, if you like. Sponsors like these have no choice but to put in a small amount of equity and then try to convince lenders that it's safe to lend the rest against future cash flow. Next, ring fencing. Sponsors with an established business who are venturing into a new area might want to protect their core activity against the failure of the new venture, and they can do this by raising project-based finance. If the new project fails, they'll only lose their equity, and that minimises the impact on their established business. Similarly, a developer with a lot of individual projects might decide to put each one of those projects into a separate SPV financed on a project basis, rather than having them all owned by the same company. Then, if one project fails for some reason, the other projects will be insulated from that failure. Joint venturing is a very common reason for project finance to be used too, especially where the sponsors are unequal in terms of their size and financial strength. A relatively small sponsor might want to bring in a much larger partner. The larger partner might prefer to borrow corporately against their own balance sheet, but the smaller partner can't. They don't have the financial substance to do that. So part of the agreement to joint venture is that the project will be financed on a project finance basis. Project financing can also be used to transfer or at least to share specific project risks. If the project goes down, the lenders will potentially lose their funds. So by providing a share of the funding, often a very large share, to a single-purpose company, a project's lenders effectively share in all the risks of the project. Sponsors who would normally borrow corporately or use their own cash to fund a project will sometimes decide to use project finance for a project in a country where they're concerned about political risks, such as nationalisation or regime change. If the project is nationalised, all they will lose is their equity. And of course, a government might also hesitate to take action against a project if by doing so they might alienate or cause losses to a large number of important international financing organisations that they might need in the future. Other project risks can also be managed or shared within project financing structures. Construction arrangements within limited recourse transactions tend to involve a much more substantial transfer of time and cost overrun risk from the sponsors to the construction contractor, and this is typically done by means of fixed price turnkey construction contracts. Another transfer of risk might happen when, for example, the buyers of a project's output agree to purchase that output at a particular price, and that reduces the volatility of cash flow but transfers the price risk to the off-taker. Last but not least, sponsors might choose project finance so as to achieve a higher debt to equity ratio than would normally be possible in a corporate financing. If lenders are offered good visibility and control over cash flow, they're much more likely to lend a higher ratio of project cost than they would against a corporate balance sheet. Debt has a lower cost than equity, and it doesn't share in project upside. As the debt ratio goes up, therefore, so does the sponsor's rate of return. So I would suggest that there are 5 motives at least which might make a sponsor think seriously about using project finance. It might be the only option. There might be benefit in putting the project inside some kind of protective fence. Joint venture structures might make project finance attractive or even necessary. Transfer of specific project risk might be a motivation. And some sponsors might want to take advantage of the low relative cost of debt to push up their rates of return on their equity. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, and in any given situation, several of these motivations may be in play at the same time. Okay, so far we've been concentrating on the sponsors and the lenders, but project financing structures will tend to involve many more players than this. In the next episode, we'll look at who those other players might be.